Okay, so welcome back to the S3 Magazine podcast. I am Wooly. That right there is Ben Battles. Um, we got Ben on tonight to kind of, I guess, talk about just a couple different topics. There's things going on, um, and 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 Ben Battles is well versed in these things. He's like we were just saying, he's got a horse in these dog fights. So. First topic, I guess the two topics are going to be Georgia's cracking down. It's kind of surprising that it's coming from Georgia and not freaking California. I'm sure it already happened there. Georgia's cracking down on K cars. That's what KEI, like small Japanese JDM, 25 years or older, little cars and trucks that have not been a problem, especially not down here in the South. Like it's just never been an issue. But all of a sudden, there's an old law that they apparently decided to dust off. We'll get into that. Topic two, which we'll probably get into, is Slamming Up Gatlinburg. Big car show. It's always polarizing. People love it or hate it. People that don't go get all pissed off about it, you know. So it's always kind of fun to talk about that drama because I'm a little outside of it now. I don't go to that shit. So anyway, let's start off with the JDM teeny weeny cars. Like what is the deal legally? What is happening? And why is this a problem?
Okay, so to start off, and I'm going to bounce around on this topic. Feel free to stop at any point if you have like a specific question, but I'm just going to kind of walk us through it from start to finish. So to start, this is very recent legislature that was passed, an 8-page document detailing K trucks, the laws in Georgia, specifically the state of Georgia, and basically denying titles for these cars or revoking registrations on existing cars within the state, which is like, number one, a huge overreach for the state since these are federally legal here in the United States as long as they're over 25 years old. That's why we have the 25-year import law. For those that are not aware, you can't just go out and import whatever car you want from wherever. Has to meet certain safety regulations and stuff. So to prevent people from importing cars from all over the place, there's a 25-year law that's instated across all states. So that's like our baseline that we're looking at here. To add on, K cars, K trucks, K vans, they all meet specific regulations and requirements in Japan, basically stating that they're going to be a certain size, length, width, height, everything down to the engine displacement. Max displacement of 660 cc's. That's less than a liter if we're doing math here. They have very tiny engines. They're very tiny cars. They're not very fast.
Hang on. Let me interrupt real quick. Yeah. These things were made for the Japanese market, specifically to be small. I know it's for urban areas. Why did they do it? Was it for insurance? Was it for what? Just urban congestion? What?
Several reasons. You're on the right page. Japan is just a small country overall. The land mass is finite, and you have a very dense population of people there. So the Japanese government basically gave automakers incentives to manufacture cars that would not exceed certain restrictions on these cars, and they could get tax breaks. And the people that purchased these cars would, in most cases, dodge like parking fees. In Japan, I don't know like the exact details, but there's like a city parking decal that you have to have in the larger cities, and cars are charged by their size. But K cars, trucks, vans, they avoid that entirely. And again, there's also going to be farmland in Japan, mountain roads and stuff like that, to where the K trucks and some K cars that are four-wheel drive make a lot of sense to navigate all of these places. And in Japan, in the cities where it's super dense and you can't really navigate some of the city streets, even some fire trucks are these K trucks because they're the only little cars that can fit through some of these narrow alleyways in case of an emergency or just to deliver product or whatever. So in Japan, they make a lot of sense. Let's transfer that over to the United States. Going back to, again, farmland. The most use that you can possibly get out of one of these things is to like buy a K truck, get four-wheel drive, get some nice rugged tires on there and use it on your farm. I mean, they don't go fast, but they will go forever. My friend Adrian, he imports a lot of K-trucks over in Tennessee. And me and him took a K-truck up a 30-degree incline. That's going to be a pretty fairly steep incline, and they handle it super well. It's like it's not even there. Some of these K-trucks you can option with like central locking diffs and stuff like that, but basically they're small. Okay, so this is where the Georgia situation comes in, because not only are they small, they're also very slow. Georgia has now revamped their laws for low-speed vehicles, your LSVs. It used to be the old law, and this is not attached in the 8-page document. This is like running concurrently with the other law. So we're going to talk about this one. The low-speed vehicle law used to be 15 miles an hour to 55 miles an hour. If your car could do those speeds, you could get a low-speed vehicle plate. Makes sense, right? K-trucks can do that roughly, and most K cars can do that. Some of your more sporty K cars like the Honda Beat, the Suzuki Cappuccino, AutoZam AZ1, all those sports cars, they got pretty tall gearboxes. They can string out to about 90 miles an hour if you really push them. But again, that's about their top speed. You're not going to see anything past that. Most K trucks have a top speed of anywhere between like 55 to 60, 61 miles an hour, like 100 kilometers an hour, essentially, which is fine for Japanese roads because most of the speed limits on the highway is going to be like 80 kilometers an hour, maybe 100 max. Okay. But here in the United States, on most of our highways top out at about 70 miles an hour. So, 115, 120 kilometers an hour, roughly. So Georgia took this law and basically decided, for some reason, I don't know, I'm not in politics. Don't come at me if you're like into the politics side of this whole thing. Feel free to drop a comment or whatever and let us know where I'm wrong. But they changed the law on the low-speed vehicles to be 25 to 65 miles an hour, meaning that pretty much every single K truck is now exempt from having full plates on the car. And so what they did was kind of run that into this new law that they passed here in May, I believe, and that is revoking the registration on these K trucks because they cannot do the required speeds to get them out of the low-speed vehicle segment. So titles are being pulled, to my knowledge. Between 300 to 400 titles have already been pulled so far, with more on the way. And it's just a matter of time. And right now, there's a whole lot of confusion as to what's going on. I've spent the day actually right here in Atlanta talking with an importer. I'm going to let them remain completely anonymous. I don't want to get involved with anything and anybody. But from what they told me, they went to the tag and title office with 4 titles for non-K vehicles. So these are just Japanese imports, regular cars that you would see on the streets over there, right? They're going to be like the regular cars that you'd see here from 25, 30 years ago, pretty much. We're pretty close to it. And they get there, and Japanese vehicles don't have a 17-digit VIN. And in this law, if you're reading through the paperwork, it seems like they're targeting all cars with 10-digit VINs. Not just K vehicles. This is every import in the state of Georgia, right? So they go there with 4 titles that they're trying to get. And they're like, the lady at the front desk is like, sorry, I can't help you. And this was at their local office, and they could not get anywhere with the local office. So they ended up having to drive several hours to the state office, like the head office for titling of motor vehicles for the state of Georgia. And they go in there and they have to talk to 3 or 4 different people and convince them that these are not K vehicles. They are just imports. And because they're exempt federally, because they're 25 years old and they can go faster than 65 miles an hour under the new law, then we should be able to get titles for them, right? well, again, they went through like 3 or 4 people, 5 hours later, and a lot of headache. They finally got their titles for it, but it just goes to show how much the state just is incompetent. It shows a high level of ignorance. And it's not like everybody at the DMV is a car enthusiast. We all know from experience they typically aren't. It's just a job to them. They don't know the difference between a K car or truck and a normal import coming from Japan. All they see is that 10-digit VIN. They don't see anything else. And they go, no, we can't register it. And then they think that's it. They're in the wrong. So we need to be bringing more awareness to this, but in a more positive light. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. I don't want to say that anyone in particular over at the state of Georgia, I'm sure they're all fine people, but we need to be able to bring awareness to this in a way that's going to be positive for the automotive community, because we definitely don't want to have people losing titles on good cars. That's the last thing we want to do. If there's a statistic out there, I think it's something like there's 10,000 imported cars in the state of Georgia overall. And like going back to what I mentioned, 300 to 400 titles have been pulled, with more to come. I don't know where that number is going to end, but I can tell you this right now. If all 10,000 owners spoke up at the same time against the state of Georgia, they would have to look into this law. Because as of right now, the folks at the state office even admitted to my guys that were going and getting their titles that this is still a gray area, and they could not define on paper what they could and could not title for them at the time, stating that they just don't title Skylines as an example, which is like, no, because one of the cars they were trying to title at the time was a Skyline wagon, and they let it through just fine. They really don't know what's going on. So it's all about raising awareness, not just to the enthusiasts, but to the people that are making these laws, enforcing these laws, and then ending up having to fulfill the law through these offices too. So there's that. Any questions?
I mean, yeah, so many. First of all, the thing that there's a lot of things that bug me. This seems like an easily solvable problem. If the problem is K trucks, can they not do, like you said, a low speed, something that says, hey, we'll title this, it's a local vehicle. You can't put this thing on interstates. You can't put this thing on any speed limit above 55. That seems totally fair. That seems like a way that's acceptable for everybody. I mean, if you've got a little Honda Acti, it shouldn't be on the interstate. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't need to be anyway. That's not what it's for. You know what I mean? And that's a perfectly fair law. Now, what concerns the shit out of me here, it feels, I don't know if this is legally true, but it feels pretty unprecedented to be revoking titles. I haven't heard of that in the years that I've been on this planet and driving. And my concern there is, where does that start? Where does it stop? I'm sorry. Once you set the precedent of revoking a title on a car that's been issued a title, somebody purchased this car, they got a title, it's legal to drive on the road, and now they're saying, no, it's not. I don't know what you're going to do with it. That's your problem, but we're not going to renew your registration. What happens, this is where my mind goes immediately, when, the EV agenda hits the next level and they go, hey, all your gas-powered cars, well, we're not going to re-register those cars. We're going to revoke those titles. So when your birthday comes around, like in Georgia, when you get your tag on your birthday, you're not going to be able to get a tag for that car anymore. Sorry for you. Enjoy your free country. And it's like, it's horse shit. And I feel like you're right. They don't know the law. I'm confused why they're targeting these K vehicles. It's not a problem in the grand scheme of things. It feels to me like they are passing laws to let them settle in to where they can abuse that power that they're passing now later. You know what I mean? It reminds me a lot of the gun laws, man, except the problem is firearms, we have an amendment for that. We've got something that we can stand against. Our vehicles, we don't. So when it comes to firearms, when it comes to guns and everything, it's like the reason people get all bent out of shape about giving up any rights is because you give that up now, you don't know how that's going to be manipulated later, right? Like for example, and I'm getting off base, but when people talk about assault weapons or whatever, why would you, or let's say background checks, well, if they've been deemed, psychologically unstable, they shouldn't be able to get a gun. Well, we can all agree with that. But you got to think in 50 years, somebody that's not born yet could be a deviant tyrant and go, you know what? Christians are psychologically unstable, or Muslims are psychologically unstable. Therefore, take their guns. They shouldn't have guns. You know what I mean? Like, people can abuse the laws, and it might be in 100 years, and you have to think about how that's going to go. So when we see these kind of laws, they're not getting voted on. These aren't voted in laws. These are just laws that they're making and imposing on the people. So, people might go, oh, it's just an old K truck, or it's an old K car. Like, who cares? That doesn't affect me. Well, no, they're laying the framework to affect you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sorry,
No, you're good. So this all goes back to, two things. One is safety of cars. I 100% agree. There is a happy middle ground between having a fully legal car and a banned titled car, and that is a low-speed vehicle plate for these cars, which now all K trucks fall under. I will be the very first person to say that driving a K car of any kind on the highway is completely ill-advised. I would not do that. I've done it before. I've done it in several cars, and it is, not only can you not go the speed limit on the highways, the vehicle cannot maintain it. I don't know if y'all have ever seen the Gears and Gasoline that came out recently, where they did a K car road trip. They blew up multiple cars just driving them on our highways. Okay. Right. That car is just trying to keep up. Adrian, when I went with him to go to the port and pick up a Subaru Sandbar, a K van, and drive it back on back roads only, never exceeding 55 miles an hour once, slung a rod bearing because it was just revving itself to death. Okay. Yeah. These cars are not meant to go on public highways. It is just not what you need to do with it. It's not safe. I'll be I'll be the first to point that out. But they are fantastic for around town. I wouldn't mind having one to go make my grocery runs. Truthfully, sure. They get 40 miles to the gallon in some instances. You put $10 worth of gas in it, you got gas for the week. Like, I'm just saying, makes sense, right? But on the second topic, number 2, it's unprecedented that titles are getting pulled and whatnot. There's a working theory on this. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. I'm really trying to pull from.
No, be one. Say what's on your mind.
Lobbyists. It's politics, money going into certain politicians' pockets. You can trace money from when a law is passed to when, people have invested money and companies. Think of the big 3. What are they making and what's their top seller right now? It's $80,000 pickup trucks, all of them. And they see these Americans thinking that they're so smart by saving $75,000 on a pickup truck by buying a K truck, because they don't need a full-size bed. They don't need a huge lift and 10 miles to the gallon going and pulling a heavy trailer. They just need a truck to go and pick up brush in their yard on occasion, or go haul their buddy's, scooter around, or, stuff like that. Like, that, and in instances it makes sense. It's not always the case. You can't pull a 15,000-pound camper with a K truck. You can't even hardly pull I don't know, like a utility trailer behind them. There's really not any capacity with those vehicles, but that's not the point. The point is that somebody felt threatened and said, hey, these are not safe. These are unsafe cars, and this is why you should ban them, and here's some money towards your campaign, Mr. Right. Or Senator person. Thank you.
The thing is,
yeah,
it's the government's job to keep us safe from like two things: invasion and pandemic, which they failed miserably at, right? That's the government's job. The government, it's not their job to keep me safe from myself.
No.
It's not why they're supposed to be there. A K truck is only dangerous to the people in it. It's not dangerous to the person in the Denali, right? Like if you hit the Denali, you're stuffing their bumper at best. Like there is, I hate to even go down this route. It's not the government's job to deem what is safe or not safe for me. That is at my discretion. You can't ban a K truck and allow a motorcycle. And I hate to even say that because they're going to be like, you're right, we should outlaw those. You know what I mean? Like it's not their job. They're overreaching. That is the definition of overreach. Somebody got their panties all in a wad over a K truck, whether it's politically motivated or personally motivated or whatever, and they're revoking titles. I don't understand, but I could maybe accept, hey, we're no longer going to issue titles from this date forward on these cars. But to revoke a title is an absolute overreach. Like
Georgia's not the first state to do this either, and not just with K trucks, but with imports. Maine did this during COVID. Up in Maine, they passed a law against Mitsubishi Delicas, of all things. You can get a Mitsubishi Delica, like a space gear. It's lifted super tall. They're incredibly top-heavy cars, and they were at a huge risk from the factory of rolling over. And when people started modifying them here and putting a bigger tire on them, it became even more top-heavy, and you started seeing more accidents. So, and it wasn't a lot, but per vehicle status, it's like you are this many times more likely to have an accident in a Delica than you would be in a normal car, right? So the state of Maine said no more titles, and we're pulling registration for all of them. So you can't have a Delica in the state of Maine, and I think in a couple of other states too. I'll have to look it up, but yeah, there's a few more states out there that are like that too. But this is nothing totally new.
No, it's not. The U.S. has safety standards, and cars have to meet certain regulations to be sold here in the U.S., and I understand that.
Yes.
But for some reason, we've had this 25-year law where after 25 years, it's like, you're not using the car for daily duty. This is kind of a hobbyist thing, or a farm truck in a lot of cases, a local, like you said, we're going to run to the local supermarket or whatever kind of vehicle.
Yeah.
I just... revoking titles crosses an absolute line for me.
Yeah.
That is it's just you are harming and inconveniencing your own citizens.
Yes, and in all reality, it's not much, but the government's losing out on those tax dollars as well. But then they're looking at it as well. If we get so much in tax dollars back, then what's that going to look like for our safety standards statewide, whatever. But then you have to be, like you said earlier, liberal across the board. If we're judging by a safety standard on some cars, they also said that cars pre-81 were exempt from all of this too, because they don't have 17-digit VINs. So it just stops right there. So imagine having a 1980 Chevrolet that, crumples upon impact, and does not have modern steel in it. And, like a 1980 Chevrolet, most of them aren't going to be kept up as well as these Japanese cars. In Japan, cars are valued. They are tools, necessities, and not everyone has a car in Japan. So they are held with high regard. That means the owners of these cars typically, not always the case, but typically keep really good care of these things, meaning that hold up. And in an accident, having really strong sheet metal is the way to go. So even still, go back to the 1980 Chevrolet. Most of them here are rusted out, absolute boxes. Just, if you get into an accident, one of those things, good luck. Some of them might not even have, your 3-point seat belts. All these cars from Japan do from the 90s at this point in time, So it's like, I don't know. It's like looking at safety standard of all cars, and why doesn't Georgia have an annual safety inspection at that point if it's really about pedestrian safety or driver safety?
That's the thing. You gotta make this make sense. If it's really about safety, why is our driver's test just a basic understanding of road signs? There is no driver's test in Georgia or anywhere in this damn country. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I know this sounds extreme, but it shouldn't. Like, people should have to understand aggressive lane changes, threshold braking, skid pads, stuff like that should be part of getting a license. And then we can talk about safety, but they're not making it make sense. They're saying that right there is unsafe. The motorcycle, well, that's okay. Whatever. The Chevy of the same era is okay. And we're not even going to talk about the fact that people can't fucking drive. You know what I mean? Like, that's unsafe. You know what I mean? Like, we can't, you start going down this, and I can feel it already, because the people that are upset about K cars, they start pointing their fingers at the other guy. Well, this guy's got this car. That's not safe. Pretty soon the government's going to be like, you're right. None of it's safe. We all have to drive Apple earpods. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's dumb. And it's not a real problem. You said 10,000 imports total. Of those, how many are K cars? We'll say 5,000, which is probably more. You know what I mean? Out of all the cars in Georgia, this is a non-issue. Let's talk about the Altimas that have been riding on bald tires for 7 months.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the guys that are high as fuck in Atlanta, driving at 110 miles an hour in Chargers. Let's talk about takeovers. Let's talk about all this shit. All of that is unsafe. You know what I mean? But we're going to target like 0.03% of the Georgia population that drives a import 1,000 miles a year or less. Like, come on. It's a waste of everyone's time.
It makes zero sense. Absolutely. And, going back to the safety thing, think of it like this. Most people that buy K cars and trucks are enthusiasts. Enthusiasts are typically safer drivers because they have money invested in their cars. They've got time invested in driving. A lot of us enthusiasts have actual track time and autocross seat time and, know how to drive a car. So we're typically safer when it comes to, operating, because we don't want to mess up what we got.
Right, because we care about what we're driving.
It's the non-drivers on the road in the Altimas with their bumpers off and the Chargers sliding through the intersections. It's those guys that are the non-enthusiasts that need to be targeted for stuff like this. I'm not calling them out specifically, but they're part of the problem. Takeover kids are the problem. That's a story for another day. But I'm with you. It's totally wrong to be targeting out this demographic of.
And I'm embarrassed of my state for being the state that's in the news about this shit. Georgia's, it's a pretty good state overall. It's a pretty kicked back, laid back kind of, we're not over-regulated when it comes to our personal vehicles a lot of the time. And this is out of character, man. But, it shows the direction that Georgia government is trying to go. So how do we solve this problem if we're going to conclude with actually having a solution rather than just bitching about the problem? One, fucking vote smarter, guys. I don't know how else to say it. Everybody says, I want to get political. Well, I want to get a little political, guys. Yeah. Vote smarter. Don't get baited on stupid damn issues and get tied up in something, over here, something that's popular on social media. when right in front of your face, they're taking your freedoms away. It's called divide and conquer, guys. They want to divide you by your race, by who you're having sex with, by how much money you make or how privileged you are or whatever it is. They want to divide you up and get you pointing fingers at each other so that they can come out with laws like this that we didn't vote on, that fuck us all equally, by the way, no matter what color your skin is or who you're screwing. You know, like it's imperative to the future of this country that as soon as fucking possible, we get smarter than this divisive, clickbaity bullshit that we've been falling for the past few elections. And we got to get on the same page here and say, you know what? Like freedom. Yeah, we all want that, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care what your background is. I want you to be free. Free from this kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? This is you guys got to pay attention when it comes to the automotive, and it's bigger than automotive, but especially in automotive, for the climate and for your safety are two things that they can absolutely handcuff you on, right? Like they're over-regulate. When somebody says, oh, so you don't like the climate, you don't like the earth, if you do, then you have to go this way, you have to drive an EV. Well, that's horse shit. But that's the narrative. You know what I mean? And now they're saying, oh, well, the K cars, they're not safe. Well, they're as safe as they are in the driver's hands. You know, like, so anyway, you guys be smart. But anyway, do you have any other, aside from voting smarter, do you have any advice on how to go about fighting this? I know that you're tight with people that do this for a living. So, by the way, they're also taking American jobs off the table when they do this.
So I'm going to speak to the general public first, and I'm going to say this. If you are in the state of Georgia or in any state, contact your local importer and let them know that you're standing by them. In the event of a class action lawsuit, the owners may be able to be involved with this. It's very much a possibility at this point. Nothing's being done officially as of right now. There are some activist groups on Facebook you can go join and be a part of the conversation. You just look up Georgia K Truck in Facebook groups. You'll find several of them. I'm a part of a couple of them, so I get updates on this kind of stuff on a day-to-day basis. So far, it's been really nice to be able to see the community come together on something like this. And we're talking about people from all over the United States, not just Georgia. So that would be a really great way to get involved with it. And, you know, just ask your local importer if you're curious about the laws, and if this affects you, they may be able to help you out as well and give you some tips of how to go about it. In the more extreme cases, to the K-Truck owners, what I'm about to say, legally speaking, I would like to make it very clear that this is not me advocating for this at all. This is just something that I've heard through the grapevine. Do not take this as legal advice. But there have been a couple of people that have looked into Montana LLCs. Do your own research. It is very possible, and there is hope for those that do need to just have a car to drive, and if that's your only mode of transportation, look at that. And that's all I'm going to say on the topic. So there we go. We'll leave it at that.
Cool. All right. So chapter 2, Slam Enough Gatlinburg.
Gatlinburg. There's a Y in there.
Gatlinburg. I can't believe we're back already doing another podcast on this, because it seems like we just did one.
Oh,
like, all right. So, you know, anybody that's kind of from this region and on social media has probably seen the blue Charger that apparently won best in show, best in all of the show. We're saying the whole, not the best Dodge, but the whole everything. Best car was a Dodge Charger, right? That stereotypically is not typical Slammed Enough type of clientele style, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
But I guess it checked the boxes of judging, right? I don't know. Like what I wasn't there, and I purposely didn't care about the drama. I saw the pictures because you could not see the pictures of the car. It had like cotton stuff in the wheel wells, total like 1999 hot import night style shit. Yeah. But like, What's the drama? Like, what is the issue here? How did it win Best in Show? Because it shouldn't have. And is it justified in doing so?
Because it shouldn't have. That's a bold claim. Okay, but...
Well, I mean, I have eyes. I look at it.
We all have eyes. Okay. All right. There's a lot to unpack on this one. I will start by saying I was in attendance there. I checked it out. I saw the car. Personally, I took one look at it and was like, this is not the kind of car I'm going to cover, because I still have an article that's going to be released soon. But I was like, this is not one of the cars that I even want to cover. I saw that it had like a TV in the trunk, and it had all the clouds and stuff like that, and like a mannequin sitting out front of whatever it was. And I was like, it's kind of strange to look at. So I was like, okay, just moving on. Didn't give the car a second thought the entire rest of the weekend. And again, I've already made this public. I'm not a super big Mopar guy, so take what I say with a grain of salt. It's not that I don't like the car. It's just that I'm not the biggest fan of Mopar cars anyway. But I will say, in my eyes, there's a lot of other cars there that were also very incredibly deserving of the award. But that's not to say that this guy wasn't, because like you said, apparently it checked the boxes, and on the official scorecard, I guess it checked all the boxes literally. So, it had parts all over it. It had all the modifications. It met all the qualifications.
No, I get it. I know what car judging is like. I know what it's kind of based on. I know sometimes somebody can have all the checks, all the right parts, and an arsenal of aftermarket parts, but it's not applied well. You know what I mean? Like, it's and maybe this car at another show would have fit in great, but it's like taking a Jeep to an exotic show, but you have a whole lot of parts done, and the judges are like, well, fuck. I mean, technically, if we're going to be good judges, this wins. Now, emotionally, this is not the right call. This is not the best in this show, but on paper, it is. Anyway, I get where the judges were probably like, what do we do here? Because technically it's got the goods, but like, who cares? That's the next point. Like, who really gives a shit who wins a trophy at Gatlinburg? Is it just a trophy?
No, dude. It's $2,000 and a trophy.
Oh, so that's where the heat is coming from.
And oh my God.
Why are they giving away money for something that takes no talent? Like, if you're giving away money and trophies, there should be a skill involved. Right? Like, car showing is throwing money at something in a lot of cases. Now, I can almost side with the Charger guy if he had a bunch of custom fabrication shit going on, and a lot of other cars just had add to cart. I'm getting the wheels that make me cool. I'm getting the bags that make me cool. I'm getting the rare JDM, whatever that makes me cool. If this guy's over there like customizing stuff, I kind of get it, even though I don't like the style.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there were definitely some custom bits on the car, not just stuff that you can go buy on eBay, Amazon, or insert company here. There definitely was, and I've looked at more photos of the car and whatnot and been like, okay, and the interior was done up really, really nice. Like, I can see that clearly. Like, there was time and money invested in the car, and to each their own, of course. At the end of the day,
was it paint or was it wrapped?
I'm pretty sure it was paint.
And I didn't look at this car clearly, for long. But like, here's a scenario: you have custom paint, and it's airbrushed, and it's got fucking skeletons and tacky shit, or ghosted in American flags. We've all seen it before, right?
Yeah.
And it's tacky, and like most people at Slammed Enough would not dig that shit, but it should beat out anything with a rap.
Yeah.
Because hands were on it. You know what I mean? Like there was intensive blood, sweat, and tears and labor in that. So I get both sides of it here. Yeah. Problem is I don't care about either side because again, I'm like, if you're giving out money and you're giving out trophies, there better be a fucking winner. You know what I mean? Like a car race where you're like, that guy won, or a sporting event where you're like, that team won, or whatever it is. A car show, it's personal discretion.
Yeah. It really is. It's down to the judging, and judging ruled that was the winner, and who am I to say any different? I'm just there to cover the show. I'm there, and there are people just walking around. I think that a happy middle ground, if we're looking at like ways to improve going into the future, would be a People's Choice Award, but I think we may have already tried that at some point. It just wasn't a thing. But like, you know, like we were talking about the K trucks and stuff like that. It's like, get involved, you know? That's the best thing you can do is just get involved with it, you know? So I don't know.
The fact that they're giving away trophies and money, in your opinion, I know you have a hard time because, you know, you're tight with those guys and you're there covering the event. But in your opinion, when you start throwing money at a winner, does it kill part of what Gatlinburg's supposed to be?
Yes, 100%. I even made a post about this saying that Gatlinburg, Slammed Enough, should not be about you winning or not winning any award or money or anything like that. You're there to spend time with the homies. You know, this is a time of the year where not just me, but a lot of people see their internet friends or friends like once, maybe twice a year, and that twice being Riverside. You know, it's like Riverside. Yeah, it's the only two times you're going to see this select group of people all year long. And so it's more about the quality time spent with those folks and establishing new relationships and friendships than it is going home with some hardware and some cash. And it's not just like best of show winner wins cash. There's like best wheels, best fitment, stuff like that. They all have cash prizes attached with them, which for the entry price and everything like that, you know, it's kind of like, okay, that's semi-justified. And the quality of cars there is super high. So you're going to see really, really top-notch stuff, like the best of the best. I would quantify it as like the Super Bowl of stance kind of a thing. Like it's like all the way up here. But you go there for the cars and the people and the vibes, as the kids say. The vibes are immaculate. It's Gat. You're in the mountains. A lot of people are renting out cabins. You're going on mountain drives. Sitting in traffic is like sitting in an open Forza Horizon lobby. It's hilarious because there's just cars all around you. Everybody's doing everything, just revving their engines, taking off from stoplights. It's unreal. Like the whole town gets transformed into this like.
Well, there's always
fancy city.
There's always been it, right? Like, I mean, just in the import world, you know, in the 90s, early 2000s, it was Nopi Nationals. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. And then, you know, by the later 2000s, it was Import Alliance. And now apparently it's Riverside Gatlinburg, you know. That makes me wonder though, the influencers, hang on a second, I got a cough. The influencers or whatever, the people that kind of run shit at the Gatlinburg type of events, you know what I mean? I mean like the who's who, right? Like, are they about to age out? I was kind of thinking about that today. You're going to say, no, man, no, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. But here is the cycle. I'm telling you the cycle, dude. Mid-20s, you're all in. You got your brand going. You got all this kind of stuff. You got some fucking Hot Wheels on your car, and it looks real pretty when it's parked and all this kind of shit, you know. And then you get to your later 20s, right? You get married. You have a kid. and you stop going to car shows, and eventually it'll be the next thing. So my question is Gatlinburg, I know you might hate to think about it, getting to that point where the people that built it are going to start aging out of it? And the reason I ask is because I had lunch with a guy that's not a car guy today. You know, we had lunch. He was like, so do you like go to a lot of car shows? And I was like, no, man, I fucking hate car shows. And he was like, no, really? You do? And I was like, I don't care about anybody's car. Like, I do, but I don't, man. I want to live car culture. I want to put together a car and use it in my daily life. Put a mountain bike in the back of it and drive to the bike park. And, you know, like, that's kind of where I'm at personally. So when I see all this drama about a Charger winning and everybody getting all bent out of shape about it, I'm kind of like, who the hell cares though? This is a car show judging cars on how good they look when they're parked.
Yeah, that was on that exact point when I first saw the post of like this car won, because I wasn't there on Sunday. I had other obligations, so I missed the awards ceremony, and all I see the very first post was this Charger. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Okay, I scroll once, and the next post is that same post. The next for 11 posts in a row on my feed were people sharing this one this one best of show, what, you know, like. And so I was like, okay, I get it. Everybody's upset. But like for years, think of it like this, going back to like Nopey culture and stuff like that. Like the heyday of modifying cars being like the early 2000s. When I think of it, like, you know, I'm a little younger. Fast and the Furious was like the thing. Need for Speed Underground was the thing. So like that's the car culture I grew up in. And seeing that kind of mirrored a lot, pretty heavily in that Charger, I was like, you all asked for this. This is what happens. You get a car and you put all that together and you bring back the good old days in a modern build. That's what that looks like.
Yeah.
Don't add that this guy won because he did it his way, and that way on paper is right.
He built it to win. Like there is a formula for building a car or a show car. And a lot of times it's not the best looking car. Yeah. I mean, dude, I was there at those Nopies, and you know who was winning that shit? It was the cars that had molded in body kits and swapped out headlight and taillight conversions, and the hood graphics were all tribal, and they went right into the dash, which was also fiberglass, and there was TVs anywhere you could fit one, and the gas lid everywhere. They were built to win car shows, and they did, but they weren't cars. You know what I mean? And I remember back then they used to call out the awards, you know, at Nopey, and people were still. We didn't have social media to bitch about it, but people were bitching. Can't believe that motherfucker won. You know, it was the same. It was the same crap then. And the thing is, Import Alliance was kind of birthed out of people being over that. So there was no. It was not a competition. There was no trophy. It was a meet. You know, and that's just what that was. But I guess you come full circle again, and then everybody's like, yeah, but if we need a winner. We need to, like, you know, let's put a title on this. Like, there needs to be some sort of competition. But look, man, people just need to and it sucks that, you know, somebody walked away with $2,000, but like, you need to realize, like, yeah, what are you building a car for, guys? It all comes back down to that. Are you building it for clout? Are you building it for a brand? Are you building it for your Instagram fame? Are you building it to enjoy it? Or are you building it to win car shows? Because they're all different. You know what I mean? Like they're different builds at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's what makes the car community the best community, is because of the diversity that comes with it. And for some people, building a car for them means building a car to win, and building it so specific. Like this guy might have been like, yeah, I'm building this car solely to win these shows, and good on him for doing so and whatnot. But other people build their cars to, you know, clout status. You see that a lot at shows like slamming enough. It's part of the culture. You see a lot of guys throwing, 7-inch barrel wheels on their stock body Accords and throwing 29, 30 degrees of camber on. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I met a guy with.
It's stupid. That's what I don't understand about where the culture is, where the youth culture is. I'm like, this is the most dim-witted scene I've ever seen. You're building cars that fucking suck.
Look, bro, going back to what we were just talking about with Nopi, it's like that's just where culture is going in like there's all these corners of the car world. Up here you got squatted trucks versus lifted trucks and race car builds and stance car builds. And in the far corner of the stance car build corner is those boys with look like the DeLorean from the Back to the Future, or it's riding around like, looking like a step on it and it goes like that, it's looking like that. But these guys are building these cars just, and the guy that I talked to up at Slam Enough, it was at the pre-meet. Dude was so cool. He was legitimately a really good guy. He just built the car because he's like, why not? I just have this car. And it wasn't like the best car. It wasn't in showcase, to my knowledge. I didn't see it. But yeah, it had 29 degrees of negative camber on it. And I was just like, how often do you go through tires on this thing, man? He said, well, I've had it aligned, so the toe's been taken out and everything. It's just the camber's there. It's matching all the way around. I go through one side of the tire because, the contact patch is so small on that. I go through the tire every 600 to 700 miles, and then I have to flip it. So he's getting a max of 1,400 miles per set of tires. If you ever wanted to know what those stance guys are going through, that's
stupid.
It's an extreme case of it, obviously. Not everybody's out there running double-digit camber on their stance cars. Some of them are, and some of them are really, really running it. But still, it's just...
I know, and I hate to go down this path because you're right. A lot of these guys, kids, whatever you want to call them, I talk to them, and they're cool. Yeah, but what they're doing is stupid. I'm sure the squatted truck guys are cool. I'm sure they pull a lot of girls. But what they're doing, my buddy said that one time. We were at a red light and we were making fun of this guy that pulled up next to us in a squatted truck, and I'm like, God, it's so stupid. He goes, yeah, it sure is. It's like, I bet he gets a lot of ass. I'm like, you're probably not wrong. Damn kids. Anyway, it's stupid. It's stupid. Explain it to me why you would take a car and make it worse and call yourself a car enthusiast. No, you're not. Or something went terribly wrong and you don't understand what a car enthusiast is. These guys take cars like STIs that were meant to absolutely fucking rip and they cut their balls right off of them. Why do you do such a thing? Why do you put a camber into a car to an extreme degree to where it ruins not only the drivability, but the ownership experience? That's not fun. I don't care what he tells you. Changing tires, rotating them every 700 miles is awful. Like, I don't understand how this has gotten so inbred. I don't get where car culture has gone here. It is a train freaking wreck. And yes, there are guys at the top, like Josh Freeman's and whatever, that do it all, right? Like they have the stance, but they also have the drivability. They have the horsepower. I'm with it, right? I get it. I understand that we're living in a social media driven world. It's very photo driven. Stance looks, it makes the car look like a goddamn superhero. Like, I get that side of it, but you're taking it and you're literally just inbreeding it to where it's got like 3 eyes. Yeah, and then we're calling this car culture. Fuck, man, help me understand. Am I just old? Am I just maybe that's what it is. It's just youthful ignorance. Not only do they not know what they're doing, but they don't give a shit that they don't know. They're just doing it, man, and they're having a good time, and they don't care that people look at them and say that they're stupid. I remember being a teenager, and at that time, this was the Nopey era, right? Like the later 90s, and we were putting fucking parts on our Hondas and our Mitsubishis and shit and thinking that we were going faster because we put an intake on it. And I remember the older guys are like, Jesus Christ, man, like, can you guys get a real car, please? And we were like, you just don't fucking get it, man. You know, like it was just youthful excitement and stupidity.
We are, as I am staring my 30s right in the face, we are like the elders now when it comes to these stance builds and whatnot, because we have officially grown up with a specific style of car to which we've become mostly accustomed to. And through the years, maybe we have become more jaded towards these builds. You know, it's just, I had that exact thought on the drive home from Atlanta today. It was like, man, a lot of these guys are like getting into these cars, and they're, you know, how I got started at like 16, 17 years old. And now that's like half my life away from me. And, you know, like maybe I am losing touch with what's cool and hip or what's got the most clout on this particular week. You know, it's like, maybe it's just like, I don't care. Or maybe it's that these other people care too much. I don't know. Point is, but fun doing what they're
doing. The 30-year-old guy, you should take them under their wing and guide them to be less stupid at an earlier age, you know, and try and get, dude, stance has been a word for 15 years at least. Stance came in and then nothing happened. Like that was it. Like it used to be like, oh man, this is the year of the big fiberglass wing. This is the year where you take all that off and you put an aluminum wing on. This is the year of the Altezza taillights. This is the year of the Black Widow body kits and all of these things. You know, this is the year of, it just kept going. And then there was like, okay, now drifting's coming in and that's changed everything. And now JDM's come in and it's totally made over what a Honda is. You know what I mean? And it's changed everything. And then stance, and then stance, and then stance, and then stance, and then another year, and then stance, but bag stance. You know, it's just like, oh, guys, come on. Can we do something else? Can we? And that's the problem with social media. No, we can't, because nobody's thinking for themselves. They're not in their garage with their buddies just doing what they do, going, man, wait till this show in 6 months that, you know, nobody's going to see anybody's car until we get there. No, they're all, every shit they take, they're on social media and they're just soaking up what the influencers are doing, which is stance. And so it just stays and it's just stagnant as hell, man.
Yeah, and that's why
at least in a guy's eyes, like, you know, I'm older. It's just, it doesn't amuse me anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think that you should ever take away the thrill of a car for the appearance of the car. It's got to work together. Function is the fashion, period.
Yeah, function and form. You know, it's function over form, but form over function. You know, there's both sides. I just finished my Riverside video and I put it on YouTube after like 6 months. And that's exactly one of the statements I made in that video, is that show promotes both worlds coming together. And I think that's what makes that show so great, is that level of diversity that kind of showcases a mixture. And like you said, bring people under your wing and just kind of be like, check this out. This is also cool.
Riverside had a noticeable vintage appreciation, a vintage motorsport appreciation. I guess that's Mason, but like I vibe with that. Like I mean that's my personal jam, you know, so I know I'm biased with that, but like I like that. It just pulls it off, right? Like it works. That's a different thing. I like that. I like vintage motorsports. I like vintage sports cars that are projects that have a more modern wheel fitment, but still poke at the nostalgic side of the car and the heart and soul of the car. That stuff's cool. but just to slam the shit out of a car so that you are lower than the guy next to you.
Yeah.
Nothing about, like, no, they take pride in the fact that it drives like shit. I don't get it. I used to have, I still have my CRX, but you probably didn't know this. When I first got my CRX, it was a basket case. The previous owner had stanced it and put a lot of fiberglass in the fenders and stuff like that. And I tried to roll with that to One Import Alliance. And literally, dude, a backpack in the back of the car upset the clearance enough to where, like, we had it up in the mountain roads over there around Chattanooga, actually, and it was scrubbing. I was like, fuck this. This car sucks. And I got home and I cut out all that shit and I put, flares on it. It became what it is now. But, like, I'm all about an aggressive stance. But you have got to be able to pull that car hard, left and right, drive the shit out of it, and it has to work. If not, you failed. You even failed at stance. The one thing that you're trying to do, you should be able to do it while actually driving the car. You know what I mean? Like, you can't have the perfect wheel fitment and not be able to get out of a driveway. That's not the perfect wheel fitment. That's a failure.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? I don't understand how this is somehow, like, just pounded its way into car culture and it's acceptable. Personally. And I know that not every car at Gatlinburg is like that, but that's what Gatlinburg represents.
Yeah, that literally is what I was just about to segue into, is like, there's a kid running around the show. I don't know if you've seen the photos of it or not. It's circulated around highly on Facebook, where he's got a whiteboard. He's walking around. And on the top,
reps guy?
What?
Is this the guy that's like rep wheels or whatever?
The top says rep wheels, and this year he added or WCIs, and I was like, oh, that's rough, because there's a lot of cars up there with water-cooled Industries wheels. But on the bottom, it said cars that are not slammed enough, aka monster trucks, and he was judging it by some arbitrary scale that some of these cars were not low enough to be what he considered to be slammed enough. Man, like 80% of those cars that are in there that are like to his standards are on air suspension. So, I mean, if you're gonna hate on anything, hate on the fake low, because everybody that got in there,
like riding
aired up, having wheel clearance and all that junk coming in. You can't say that. You can't have that tally, because you don't know. Are you going and checking to see if it's got a 3P controller in every car? I don't think so, man. Like, I don't know the guy personally, but I was like, man, what a punk.
What a wiener.
No,
dude, like
that. Like, oh my god.
Bags are like the electric mountain bikes of the car world. They're cheater bikes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand where we've gotten so consumed with how the car looks when it's not moving. Right? Yeah. Like, it's just like, if you don't drive it like that, it doesn't fucking count. I don't care what it looks like when it's stagnant. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you start the car and you raise it up 2 inches and it rides around looking like every other damn car, what are you bragging about? The fact that you can park your car and lower it better than other people, I'll take the monster truck.
I wanted to have my old Passat lowered, and I was debating on getting coilovers for it and everything, because I liked the way that it looked lower. But then it was like, I could just get a bag set and have it like on the ground, and it looks cool. For me, it was like an aesthetics thing, because it looked like it was photoshopped like almost into the ground. The subframe was literally touching the ground when it was aired out. And I told my friend that helped me build it, I was like, I don't want my car back unless it is like touching the ground somewhere. And then even then, I need to make sure like it's like sitting right. And I put the spacers on, the Bentley wheels and everything, and got it to where like it was credit card fitment pretty much all the way around. Tucked credit card fitment, but it was like close to where I parked at slightly an angle. The quarter panels would sit on the bead of the tire and not go down all the way. Like it was close. But it was more of an aesthetics thing. So like I get it. I get why people do the bags versus static, because you can't have a car looking 100% aesthetically pleasing if it's on its nuts on the ground with all the camber in the world and the fitment being this tight to the fender. You're gonna have bacon fenders first, like rock pebble you hit, seriously. And a lot of these guys are running like 22K spring rates or higher, so it's like no rebound, no flex, no nothing. It's like riding around on just washers at that point. Just calling it what it is.
Yeah. I mean, whatever, to each their own, right? I guess that's why there's ice creams of different flavors. You know? Like, it's not all supposed to be chocolate, right? Like, yeah, do your own. Personally, I would encourage you to think outside of that box and, you know, stance your car in a way that you can actually thrash it and enjoy it and do what it was intended to do, and modify a car to make it better instead of worse. That should be kind of in the priority list somewhere. But anyway, whatever. It's just not my style. But I come from like a motorsports upbringing, you know? So like to me, a cutout fender with a big DOTR tire and brake dust up the side of the car and tires that you can tell have been melted around the corner and shit like that, no interior and a cage, that's always way cooler to me on the street than some neutered out little Volkswagen or whatever the hell they're driving. You know what I mean? With cute little stretch tires and boutique-y little wheels. You know, it's just not my. It's not me. But
personally attacked, Wooly. I feel personally attacked.
Well, you know, you can change it, man. We can get any kind of car you want to get. You need to get yourself an old freaking Honda or something and start rolling. Anyway, the minivan doesn't count. But actually, the minivan, whatever they call that thing, would be dope if you like conjured that thing out.
Yeah, I've thought about it. I've got some plans for mine personally. You know, I got it the way I wanted it with the Nintendo 64 hooked up in there and everything, like old school video.
That thing needs to be slammed, stout, window nets, like race nets in it, the whole 9 yards, dude. That'd be cool.
That would be. Now I'm gonna go into Photoshop and spend all night, thanks to you, doing all this stuff that's gonna be like, hey, look what I'm never gonna do to my van.
Do it. Anyway, I guess we about beat that horse to death, right? Which is weird. That's the second time I've talked about a horse in this podcast.
Well, I mean, if I do have one thing to say, and it's genuinely towards the organizers of Slammed Enough. I think they did a really great job this year. I was telling everyone at the show that, like, just like Riverside this year, I've been to all of them, and I've been to all Slammed Enough Gatlinburgs. So, like, I've got the experience from start to now. It's like this year, Riverside skipped a step and jumped. It didn't just climb the stairs. It jumped a whole step and skipped one. And then Slammed Enough followed it, because the quality of the builds that were in there for their purposes was just incredible. The pre-meet that was hosted by the guys at Vaded Mob, oh my goodness, like the caliber of car just sitting in the parking lot, and you could just walk up and look at any of these cars outside, was just like, whoa, this is. They had all flavors represented from every brand. It was impressive, crazy. It was like, man, this really is way different than last year. And it was. And the show went on to prove that. And like, if I had a personal choice of my favorite car of the show, again, I've said this publicly, my friend's Nissan S15 Varietta. It's a convertible S15, purple bass boat flake, really, really pretty car. There's like none in the United States as of right now because they're not federally legal yet. This one's, you know, a way up North America car. But it was just gorgeous. I was like, yeah, that's the one. That's it for me. That's OEM plus. Nice. Good job. Perfect. That's the winner. But, you know, there were tons of cars there. And it didn't matter what you liked. as long as it was a slammed car, you would find it there. And everything was done up right. Like, one of my favorite cars wasn't even, it was probably one of the ones on that dude's whiteboard that was not slammed enough or whatever, was in the very corner. There was this Audi S8 that had 720 wheel horsepower. And it was just like, man. And he did the interior up real nice and everything. It was wrapped and had nice forged 21-inch wheels or something like that. Like, man, I was like, yeah, that does it for me. But everybody was just passing it by. So they're like,
right.
No, they care about that. It's just a big block, just a brick sitting there of the room. But
yeah. So I guess I got one last question. It seems like Slammed Enough is Gatlinburg is the type of event that's eventually going to outgrow Gatlinburg, right? Like, it gets so big. Well, I know it's already not even in Gatlinburg, but it gets big, it gets rowdy. Everybody kind of rumors that, like, oh, they're going to end up running that show out like Soho and Helen. You know what I mean? Do you see that happening? Like, you don't think this was the last one, do you? I mean, do people keep it pretty tame? I mean, there's a fine line there, because I don't think people should keep it tame. You know what I mean? Like, I think car shows need to be kind of rowdy, but also when they get to that certain growth point, you got to control it, or else it'll get so rowdy that you get kicked out of the town.
It'll become Soho, it'll become H2O, it'll become.
And like, is that kind of like Gatlinburg's destined to become? I mean, or you think they can pull it off and let it survive?
This year, there were some goobers that decided that one of the parking lots that we were using temporarily as like the unofficial meetup spot, basically a spot that was so big the cops couldn't kick everybody out because there were diners open and stuff like that in the same parking lot. So patrons were actively inside the restaurant.
Police. What diner was it?
What?
What diner was
it? It was Guy Fieri's, like, Flavor Town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like that whole strip mall, it's just the whole thing was filled with cars, because the first location of like the after party or whatever after the show was the baseball fields. The cops got smart last year and decided to block off that parking lot for the majority of the show, and did it again this year, except they had cops redirecting traffic, and we're like, no, you can't go here. So everybody went to the closest place, which was that. So the police just pretty much gave up and put a trooper sitting right there in the parking lot, just posted up, and everybody was relatively cool up until sometime between like 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. Saturday going into Sunday. There were some kids that decided, I'm going to take my mom's Pontiac Grand Prix and this guy's V6 Challenger, blah, blah, whatever, the usual suspects, and go and rip some skiddies and burnouts and do stuff in the road and, get rowdy like you're talking about, just like, I don't know. To me, it's kind of expected. It's a stance car show with a bunch of people. You can't keep out all the riffraff. There needs to be some life, but at the same time, respecting private property is also a big thing. Like as time goes on, the respect for these businesses and places needs to be kind of treaded lighter and lighter, because more people that get involved in this community just to be degenerates will give everybody a bad name. So you kind of have to watch how you play and how hard you play, in certain
right. Hoon wisely.
Hoon respectively. At discretionarily, it is what it is. At the end of the day, it is what it is. I don't think it's going to be H2O like next year or anything. I don't think it was even remotely close to anything H2O or SOO this year. For the amount of cars and people that's there, it's like Rod Run. Bro, there's go to a Rod Run in Pigeon Forge, like one of the big ones, like a spring Rod Run. Go to a spring Rod Run and go look at the amount of 1971 Corvettes piloted by shirtless dudes that think they've got the biggest, baddest car on the strip and pulling burnouts at the light, going light to light, you know, don't care if they get a ticket or the cops show up or what, you know. And it's just like, same thing applies here, man. It's just like it's a different culture. It's the same thing, but just a little different genre. I don't know. But as far as the event venue, I think this might be as big as it could possibly get.
Really?
For me and a lot of other photographers, our main complaint was there's not enough space to move around. And with the amount of people that come to this show, once people get in, good luck getting a photo or a video or anything. It is like, it is just incredibly hard to do so. Luckily for media, they let everybody in same time as like the cars actually roll in.
Right.
So you get, you know, like a good hour and a half, 2 hour window without people in the photos if you really need to do show coverage, which I did. So I was there at the appropriate time. But if you're just a guy showing up with a camera hoping to snag some good pictures of cars with you and your buddies, man, good luck. You're going to get about 6 legs in that photo at any given. I'm serious. They are just people just go walk and it's like, ooh, and then everybody congregates around the cool cars. It's like you'll never get that photo unless you just sit and wait and wait. And I mean, like, I talked to this one guy that he was just sitting there with his camera like this on the ground, crouched down. And I was over at another car and I see him and he's just standing there. And I had this full-fledged conversation with one of my buddies. I go up to him, I'm like, hey, man, you trying to get a shot of something? Yeah, I'm trying to get a shot of that Toyota over there. I was like, all right, how long you been here, man? He's like, I don't know, man, like 5 minutes. Yeah, I know you've been here for that long just waiting on this one shot. Oh, man. And good luck getting people to, like, help you stop traffic because there's so many people in such a finite space. And the lines for the concession stand were, like, 45 minutes long at their peak. Oh, it was out the door. Yeah, it was bad. They were a little overwhelmed. Their poor kitchen staff was a little overwhelmed. I ended up going like hours after lunch, was like settling down to finally get some food. I still waited like 20 minutes, but you know, like it was crazy to just move around in that building.
Yeah.
A couple years back, they had to some pushback by some people outside showcase parking, and they took up like the side lot for like extra showcase parking, but then that meant that the regular lot for spectators was like full. They were turning people away. It like, you know, I think there's a happy medium in here somewhere. You can't go much bigger at the current space that you're at. And the original one at the Gatlinburg Convention Center it kind of got to that point very quickly where it was like, there's just not enough room. The parking situation is awful. And the town itself was just so overwhelmed that it was a mutual, hey, we're not doing this next year thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess with that, did you shoot photos? Is that going to go on S3?
Yes, it will. I'm working on now. I just finished all the photos literally before we hopped on this call. So, yeah.
So, all right. So by the time you guys hear this podcast, it should be like up or just about up.
Just about.
So check out s3mag.com to see Ben Battles' lovely photos and coverage of the event. And then also, where can they follow you, man? Like Ben Battles, if you don't, I'm sure you already know him. If you don't know him, he does a lot of really cool like Instagram and TikTok short video content introducing you to different cars, usually of the JDM variety, but not always. And with that comes like random weird information that you seem to know about every different car. Just trivia facts. Anyway, where can they find you on those platforms?
You can find me on Instagram at battles.digital. That's me. And then also on YouTube, I'm uploading like weekly videos now, full length, on some of the feature cars that you'll find on my Instagram. And that is also Battles Digital on YouTube. You can look me up. I'm in the suggested feed once you type in the word Battles now. So I'm happy about that. You know, people are finding me easier now. It's great.
Nice.
Yeah, you'll find me there.
Cool. All right. Well, if you made it this far, hour and 20 minutes, thank you. We appreciate that. And I guess, we'll see you soon. We always got more to talk about.
Yeah, of course. We'll have more to talk about. Be yourself. Don't do drugs. Stay in school. C's get degrees. All that jazz.
All right, man. We'll see you guys.